So the take-home message is well-designed, whole food, plant-based diets are nutritionally adequate and can provide very powerful protection against chronic diseases. And so finally, are there benefits to eating plant-based beyond ourselves? And the answer, of course, is absolutely positively yes. If you eat a plant-based diet, you're probably taking the most powerful step that any human being can take towards the preservation of this planet. And I want to tell you, when my son was in his fourth year undergraduate degree in environmental sciences, the professor had all of the students in the class calculate their carbon footprint. And my son lived about a half an hour drive from the university, or 20 minutes or something like that. And so he was driving a car, and there were a lot of students in the class that were super environmental keenists, and they were taking 2-minute showers and biking to school and all of those things. And when they calculated their carbon footprint, my son had by far the lowest carbon footprint in the class. And the other students were just, they were just outraged. They said, "But sir, he drives to school." And my son called me right after this happened because he was so excited. The teacher looked at the class and said, "Read my lips. He doesn't eat meat. It doesn't matter how much he drives, you will never touch him." So I thought that was pretty cool of the teacher to say that. And the reality is the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences released a report in their journal in 2016 that actually did the math. And they said by 2050, greenhouse gas emissions would be reduced by 29% if everyone followed the global dietary guidelines to eat more fruits and vegetables and eat less meat, sugar, and calories. But they would be reduced by up to 70% if everyone went vegan. And their recommendation, a global shift to a plant-based diet. Dr. Walter Willett will be here speaking, and he is, I believe, the most quoted epidemiologist in the world. And with, I think, 1,700 peer-reviewed published journal articles to his name. And he was heading up this Lancet Commission. And what he said was, transformation to healthy diets by 2050 will require substantial dietary shift. Global consumption of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes will have to double. And consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar will have to be reduced by more than 50%, basically to achieve our goals. And plant-based diets, when we think about benefits beyond ourselves, we cannot ignore the benefits to our fellow creatures that we share this planet with. Eating plant-based, to me, is the most ethically justifiable choice. I can remember, I'm going to tell another story about my son. When my son was 3 years old, we were driving by a McDonald's, and he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, can we have a McDonald's hamburger?" And I knew he had seen the commercials of the Hamburglar stealing the burgers off the trees, and I thought it was time to tell him that hamburgers don't grow on trees. So I said to him, I said, "Honey," I said, I have to tell you something. I said, the hamburgers at McDonald's are not the same as the hamburgers at home. At home, we make our hamburgers with beans and with nuts and things like that. And the hamburgers at McDonald's are made of cows. And he looked at me like I had just lost my mind. And he said, "Mommy, people do not eat cows." And I was trying to think of what to say, and then he said, "Do they, Mommy? Do they?" And I said, "Yes, they do." I could see the little tears coming down, and he said, "But Mommy," he said, "them have eyes." He said, "Don't they know that cows are people too?" And out of the mouths of babes, I thought, it's amazing how kids just get it. When we think about ethical justifiability, if everyone ate plant-based, the global calorie supply would increase 50%, which could effectively wipe out hunger. And of course, the situation for animals, I love this little eat more kale, I became vegan because I decided to educate myself about animal agriculture when I had an interaction with a hunter who just happened to be one of our closest friends, and he was on his way deer hunting. And he said to me, I said to him, I don't understand why how you could feel good about going into the bush and shooting another beautiful deer. And I said, what is it? It's not a sport. Why do you have to do this? And it was what he said back to me that changed the course of my life. He said, Brenda, just because you don't have the guts to pull the trigger does not mean you are not responsible for the trigger being pulled. Every time you buy your piece of meat camouflaged in cellophane in the grocery store, he said, at least the animals I eat have had a life. Can you say the same for the ones that are sitting on your plate? And I was silenced because I had no reasonable response. And I vowed that I was a public health nutritionist, and I vowed at that point that I would find out more and take responsibility for the food I was eating. And when I started to research it, it took me about a week to say, I'm not doing this anymore. And I said to my Northern Ontario husband, who was best friends with the deer hunter, I said, we had never really met real live vegetarians. We were in Northern Ontario. It's beer, bingo, hunting, and fishing, basically, there. And I said, would you be willing to become a vegetarian? And he looked at me, and he smiled, and he said, I thought you'd never ask. He said, I would love to be a vegetarian. And I thought, how did I get so lucky? I picked very, very well. This year will be our 42nd anniversary. So I think I did okay. The reality is 70 billion animals are slaughtered for food every year, and the vast majority are raised in CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations. Probably at least 90% in North America are raised in CAFOs. And we don't have time to go into detail, but I'll tell you just this, is that what we do to pigs, if we did to dogs, we would be charged with a criminal offense. It is beyond belief how we raise these sentient beings. And, for me, the thing that comes to mind is why would we as human beings cause pain, suffering, and death in our fellow creatures when it is not only unnecessary, but it is ultimately destroying our planet and destroying our own health? It makes no sense. Albert Einstein once said, we have to do the best we can. This is our sacred human responsibility. By getting our nutrition from plants, we all win. And we have a choice. When we consider the consequences of our food choices, not just for ourselves, but beyond ourselves, a plant-based diet, in my view, becomes both an ecological and an ethical imperative. And with that, these are my books, and with that, I'll say thank you very much for your attention.